The release of Disney Lorcana's 9th set, Fabled, is just around the corner, and honestly, it might be my favorite set yet. Now, I know for a lot of people the reprints are a little bit of a bummer, and for that reason this set isn't for everybody. But for me, it's allowed me to revisit some of these cards, to appreciate how the game has changed over time in terms of its design, and then to revisit the history of some of these cards. There's a lot of fun nuance to this set, and if you're a collector or you like nerding out over Lorcana or TCGs in general, this video is probably for you. And it might be one of my favorite videos I've ever filmed. So buckle up, let's dive in, because there's a lot to talk about. I've got cards spread out all over the table in front of me, and I bet you I can find you something that you didn't know. To start, let's begin with some of the most obvious changes, and we'll start with the legendaries. Now, this is Set 1 Hades, and this is Hades from Fabled. Right away, you can see some major differences. The big one being the security stamp on the bottom. Now, this is new in Fabled, and you can see it's really kind of cool. There's a lot of ink symbols in there. It looks really blinged out, and honestly, when you see this in a pack, it's a lot more exciting than seeing the old legendary symbol. The other big change is, since Set 1, they've started adding a gloss treatment to the legendary characters, and you can kind of see that here on the video. I'm catching it right. I think you can see it there. And that's really kind of cool, and it gives this card a real upgraded look compared to the old base Hades. But wait, there's more. You may have noticed as you're looking at this card already that they've made some aesthetic changes to the design of this card. The first obvious one being that they've sized down the font here in this ability name. Is there a downside to this? This gives the text kind of more room to breathe in that box, and it's also allowed some little subtle changes. For example, that's given more room for play to come up off this bottom line into this top line here. Now that doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but it is a kind of a fun design change. You can also see here, it's really subtle, but the font here on this Hades is just a little bit thinner. And then here, big change in the ink symbol. You can see back here in Set 1, it's a little bit lighter, allowing it to stand out more, and it's darker in this bubble here, or in this block here. Now, one thing to note is that there has been a lot of variation in color saturation over different print runs, and even single sets. So sometimes it's just natural print variation, but here it seems very intentional. This is a lot darker right here. One other thing I want to point out, and it's a little difficult to notice, but there is one thing that I think that's a slight downgrade in this card, and I just have to mention it. Based on the color saturation, you actually lose just a little bit of the detail in this background here. There's a really cool skeleton up here, and there's another one in other parts of the card. And if you look, you can't see the bones quite as well here. So if you're looking at the differences in these cards, you actually get a little bit more of the background in the old cards than the new cards, and can appreciate it just a little bit more. But anyway, super fun to look at these differences. Moving on, let's take a look at another legendary in this set. Oh, whoops, that's a super rare. Well, you know what? It used to be a legendary, and here it is from Into the Inklands. This card is a lot of fun to talk about. I know that we've seen some downshifts, and everybody's aware that cards are downshifting in rarity, but it had a very interesting effect on this card, which you can see as soon as you look at them side by side. You see, at a certain point, they started introducing frame breaks into these legendary cards. And you can see that here on the trumpet, you can see that here with the feather. And what that means is that for this particular art, they had to zoom in order to allow those pieces of the character to break the frame. Well, as soon as you are not doing the frame break anymore, like on the super rare card, it would look really awkward if that art was cut off by the frame. So you had to zoom back out a bit, which means we're actually getting more Gonzalo Kenny's artwork here. Fantastic artist from Argentina. Shout out to Kenny. You're actually getting more of that art here. So you can actually see Mickey's shoes. You can actually see more of this curl, and you can appreciate more of the background and where Mickey is now that you're zoomed back out. So it's kind of fascinating. Another big change, and you kind of notice it, is they started introducing things into the text box. And so legendary cards now, the artwork kind of bleeds over, and you can see here, this is a normal Lorcana background here in the Set 9 version. And here you have a darker background where you get some different design that's unique to this particular legendary card. So a lot of fun there. I like looking at these differences quite a bit. And it's a really interesting thing when cards downshift from legendary to super rare, because as soon as you downshift them, you have to change the artwork to account for the frame breaks, and it's kind of cool. Speaking of seeing more artwork, let's take a moment to look at the epic cards in this set, or at least one of them. Here's Ursula Sea Witch. Now, she was originally printed in Into the Inklands, so a long time ago. And actually, you know, just for fun, let's throw out her original printing here, even though there's not a whole lot of difference. So there she is from Into the Inklands, and then this is her non-foil version and her epic version from Fabled. One of the interesting things to notice is there are other card games, and I'm not going to call it any by name, but there are other card games where to get full art of cards, you actually zoom in on the artwork. And so you're getting the same piece of art, you're just getting it in a more zoomed in version to cover the whole frame of the card. But here in these epic cards, or at least in this particular one, you're actually seeing more of Ursula's artwork. So take a look at the tentacle here, for example, you're getting more of that. And here, this tentacle on the side has more room to breathe, where this one is butted just up against the frame. And so what these epic cards really reveal is more of what the artist originally did for the card, which is a ton of fun. Something fun to note here on this epic card is they actually apply the gloss foil treatment as well on these epic cards, and most of the time it's applied only to the character, but here you can see they've also applied it to the lightning bolts around Ursula as well, giving it a really fun feel and accentuating that part of the art. So really kind of cool, and I don't know, it's just fun to see more artwork on these cards. I couldn't find a ton of difference here in these cards, although there is one thing. I'm going to see if you notice it, because we're going to talk about it later. Now, we've already taken a look at one downshifted card, that Mickey Mouse Trumpeter. Let's take a look at another. This is Robin Hood Unrivaled Archer from set 1, and this is Robin Hood Unrivaled Archer from Fabled. And you can see he's been downshifted from a super rare to a rare. But one of the things that reprints lets you do is clarify some of the rules language on a card and change it up to make sure that it makes sense. This is an ability that wasn't really errated, but it was clarified. And if you take a look at his ability, Feed the Poor, you can see already, just by looking at it, that the text box is different because they've had to move things around to make room for more language. On his original Feed the Poor ability, Robin Hood says, when you play this character, if an opponent has more cards in their hand than you, draw a card, a must ability. And what they clarified later on, and they've actually printed it on the card this time, when you play this character and if an opponent has more cards in their hand than you, you may draw a card. So really fun difference here. If you're choosing which one of these cards to run in your deck, you might choose one or the other based on whether or not you want to have the clarified rules on the card. Now, since we're talking about the evolution of Robin Hood, this is a fun chance to talk about one other fun Easter egg in history. Let's take a look at the original printing of Robin Hood. And no, I'm not talking about the first chapter. I'm talking about the D23 promo that was released in 2022. Now, there's a lot of little differences on this card, but there's one in particular that I find kind of fun. If you haven't noticed before, and I'm sure everybody has, but this little symbol here between the rules text and the flavor text indicates whether or not the quote on the bottom is original to the world of Lorcana, or whether or not it originated from that character in their original film or story. The book means that it's an original quote from the film, and a pen means that it's original to the world of Lorcana. Now, at the time of the D23 printing, clearly they hadn't worked that out yet, or they made a mistake, because you have this pen symbol here separating these two text boxes, or these two parts of the text, where it really should be an open book. So again, it was either a mistake or that was a design decision that was made between the printing of the D23 Robin Hood and the Robin Hood in the first chapter. So we got to look at a little bit of rules change or clarification there with that Robin Hood. Let's take a look at another example from Fabled. This is Winnie the Pooh Honey Wizard, and here you have his printing from set 2, Rise of the Floodborn, and here you have his printing in Fabled. Now, Pooh is a vanilla card, and so there's not much rules to clarify except his card type or subtype. And take a look right here. This card in Fabled adds the honey classification or the honey tag. It's not on his original card in Fabled. Now, no idea what this means. There's no rules for it yet, but clearly in the future, this is going to mean something. We can tell that Ravensburger has plans for this card. They're going to do something with it. We don't know what it is, but there's a reason that it appeared in Fabled beyond just the desire to print an enchanted card. So let's talk about how we're actually getting new versions of every single card that's being reprinted in Fabled. And to do that, let's take a look at foils, because it's kind of fun. Here we have Aurora Dreaming Guardian from set 1, well, over here, from set 1, and over here we have Aurora Dreaming Guardian from Fabled. Now, these are the foil versions of the card, and it's important to remind people at this point that Ravensburger changed foiling techniques between sets 1 and now. I mean, I think it started with Arcasia's Island. Originally, they used a cold foil treatment, which you can see here on this set 1 Aurora. Now, cold foiling is a technique where you print the card, then you print an adhesive on the card, you apply a foil layer, and then you pull the foil off to see where it sticks to the card. And this allows you to very selectively choose where you're foiling the card. And here you can see it on her vines and everything else. But it's also important to note that although you see it on the ink symbol, you see it on the rarity symbol on the bottom, you don't see it in the lore, you also see it in the stats, but you don't see it throughout the card. Here you have Aurora Dreaming Guardian in foil from Fabled, and here you can see that they've moved to this PET treatment. PET stands for polyethylene terephthalate, also known as PET. This is a metallized plastic film that you apply to the entire card, and it has the effect of foiling pretty much the entire card. And you can see that difference here with the foiling showing up in the text box, where it doesn't show up in the text box of the cold foil in the original treatment of Aurora. And so this is interesting. Now, some people may prefer the cold foil, some people may prefer the new foil, but either way, you're getting a new version of bling for this card to choose from. As a fun note, this is also why the new foils curl more than the older foils, because this plastic film that you apply over the entire card shrinks at different rates due to temperature than the cold foil does. It's science, it's a whole thing, but in any case, the important point is you're actually getting new versions of these cards, and you can pick or choose now whether or not you want to use a cold foil in your blinged out deck or whether or not you want to use the pet foil. To highlight the difference again, let's take a look at another card. This is Sisu Emboldened Warrior. On the left, you can see Sisu Emboldened Warrior from Ursula's Return, and on the right, you can see it from Fabled. And again, you have the whole foil treatment on the text box and everything on the new version, and on the left, you have just the foiling applied to the picture, and you have it on various parts of the card. But again, you have different versions of this card to choose from. I want to highlight one more just because, I don't know, it's fun and it's a playable card. Here's Develop Your Brain. This card obviously is just a common, and so it has no upscaled version other than the foil. And here you can see again, players are getting a new choice of which version to play with for their blinged out deck. On the left here, you have the whole foil card, the pet foil applied to the whole thing, and on the right, you have the cold foil with the art applied just to the artwork. Now, this is a fun chance to talk about foreign cards, just because it's an interesting note. Let's take a look at this card here. Now, this is a Japanese card, and it has kind of a pet foil treatment as well. This is not a cold foil the same way the other card is, or at the very least, the card stock is different, meaning that in this cold foil version, what happens is the cold foil picks up the texture of the paper, which is why it doesn't shine the same way as you have the pet foiling shine. And that's why it has that kind of, I don't know, that duller look because of the paper texture. Here, if it's a cold foil, it's different paper texture, but it looks very, very different. You also, I don't know, it's just different because it's only foiled in the actual artwork. And so you really have three different foiling versions between the foreign cards and the original print of the card, and then in Fabled. To segue, we'll take a look at one more version of these cards. Here is Aladdin Prince Ali by Lauren Walsh. It's her only card in Lorcana, by the way. You can see on the right the Fabled version, and on the left you can see the first chapter version, and they're clearly different. But to segue, let's take a look at one more thing that's different between these reprinted cards, and you can see it here on the bottom right. In the later cards, they've started wrapping Disney and copyright Disney Lorcana on the bottom right of the card. Now, this is not a secret. They actually started doing this a while ago between sets 5 and 6. If you take a look here, you have Lose the Way from set 6, and you have Anna Eager Acolyte from set 5, and you can see that that's really where they made the shift on the English cards. Now on the foreign cards, they started doing the wrapping right away, set 1 in Japan, but here's another difference. And so as you see these reprinted cards, that's another small nuance difference in the bottom right of the card. Now, since we're talking about the differences in foiling, let's nerd out and talk about another two in this set. To start, here's that silver foiling we're seeing from Fabled with this Aurora here. Here is the cold foil we're seeing from set 1, and here is a rainbow foil. Now, a lot of times we use these terms interchangeably, but they actually mean things. This is the Aurora Dreaming Guardian, which has this silver pet foil treatment. You can notice that there's no refraction of light, there's no rainbow to it. Here in this epic version though, when you look at how the light bounces off the foiling, it actually has different hues to it. It has different colors, different tones. This is because this is rainbow foiling, and it's different than the silver foiling that you see in this card. It's different paper, and so this is kind of a nerdy, nuanced thing, but it actually matters when you're talking about different foil types. Now, let's look at something else that's happening in Fabled for the first time, and that involves starter decks. Boom! This is Powerline from the starter decks. Now this is a rainbow foil as well, but it has this texture to it. I'm not sure the appropriate name. I'm sure I'll find out later, but this represents something new for Lorcana. In previous starter decks, or now they're called single player decks, the main characters, the principal characters, of which Aurora is one, had the same foiling treatment as the cards that you could pull from the packs of cards. And so when you pulled that card from the pack, same from the starter deck, etc. Here, this card features a unique foiling that you can only get, we assume, from the single player decks, which means that when you pull this card in the packs, it's going to be different. But take a look at that texture. It's super cool. If you're playing Powerline and you want this blinged out version, you're going to have to buy 4 starter decks or trade or buy singles because, I don't know. Anyway, this is super cool and I love this a lot. Now we've talked about fixing rules. Let's talk about fixing mistakes. This is Mickey Mouse Standard Bearer from Ursula's Return. Notice anything weird about it? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. The big error on this card is the artist. This card was actually illustrated by Mariana Moreno, and the artist here credited is Christian Romero. Christian Romero, an artist from Colombia, Mariana Moreno from Mexico, both fantastic artists, fantastic people, but a mistake nonetheless. Now, I think they actually fixed this in later printings of Ursula's Return, maybe, maybe not. But one of the first things I did when I pulled this card from Fabled is take a look at the artist credit, see if they got it right, and they did, and this card is now credited to Mariana Moreno. So if you like collecting different versions of cards, that's a fun little difference here. Let's take a look right up close. But Mariana Moreno credited now, where Christian Romero was erroneously credited in the past. Now, this is not the only artist interview in Lorcana. It's been done a ton of different times. You can find a bunch of examples, but it's been done with another card in this set before. And to segue, let's talk about it. This is Bruno Madrigal, Undetected Uncle, and we'll talk about why this card is special in a moment. Some of you already know. But let's talk about the artist for a minute, because this card is illustrated by Juan Diego Leon, and this is the D23 version. And you can see that this card in D23 was erroneously assigned to Matthew Robert Davies, as you can see below here. Now, the original printing of the card did have Juan Diego, and then when they reprinted it, they had Matthew Robert Davies in the bottom. This was a mistake, this was an error, and you can see they've definitely made sure to get it right here on this Bruno Madrigal. But this is a fun chance to talk about Bruno. Some of you may know, if you're watching this right now, the fun little trick that Ravensburger played on us, and that is making him card 0, the first time we've ever had a card 0 in Lorcana. The fun, kind of flavor that made this extra spicy and hilarious was not only do we not talk about Bruno, which is why they didn't talk about him during previous season, but his subtitle is Undetected Uncle, and he sure was undetected by everybody, except for Ravensburger, who again didn't tell us about him until he was pulled out of a pack later on. So anyway, that's fun. This is the first 0 card. If you're watching this later, you may not know, but yeah, Bruno Madrigal, Undetected Uncle, fun little card. So if you're playing him, you may want the 0 version. I don't know, because flavor. So speaking of errors, let's take a look at another one from Lorcana history because it's fun. This is Elsa Gloves Off from Fabled. It's a card that's reprinted from set 2. This is the original printing of Elsa Gloves Off from Rise of the Floodborn. Now, do you see the difference? Probably not. It's subtle, but take a look at the trees behind the horse here. In the original printing of this card, somebody in the team made a mistake and accidentally broke this tree here behind Elsa. Now, that was not in the original version of the artwork, and they actually reprinted this in later printings of Rise of the Floodborn. As you can see here, it's already been corrected between these two versions. So here we have the original, here's the original printing, and you have the new printing, and then you have the Fabled printing. So they made sure to keep that correction in there, but it's a fun little bit of Lorcana history as we're taking a look at Elsa Gloves Off, reprinted in Fabled. Speaking of Elsa, she's not the only one to see a reprint in this set. This is Elsa Snow Queen. And not a ton of change in this card, but once again, it's an opportunity to highlight what we saw in Hades earlier, some of the changes they made to the aesthetic of the cards. And you can see right here, starting from the bottom to the top, Hades isn't the only one that saw the text size change between the first chapter and now. You can see it here with Elsa, with Freeze being really bold and highlighted and large in the first chapter, and here it's a little bit more subtle, giving more room to breathe for the card. You also see the ink symbol change again, here being a little bit brighter and easier to see in set 1, and it's been darkened here and kind of blends into the background in Fabled. Now again, it is worth mentioning that oftentimes we see color variations between print runs, and so it's not uncommon to see these different color changes, but here in this particular instance, it does seem like a design choice to make the changes to that color. So another fun note, again, as you're looking at these cards and you're looking at the value of picking up reprints or not, consider that there have been some aesthetic changes to these cards, and one is clearly different than the other. Lastly, let's talk about the most important reprint in this set. It's Flounder. Flounder saw a reprint in this set. Is one of the most memed cards. Shout out to Citizens of Lorcana for making this a thing with brilliant art by Brian Weiss. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to talk about a change between set 1 and now, but what I am going to do is use this as an opportunity to highlight a little Easter egg, which some of you may not know about, and that is the hidden Ravensburger symbol in this card. We all know about hidden Mickeys. They appear throughout Lorcana, but here artist Brian Weiss very specifically chose to shadow this window and make it look like a Ravensburger blue triangle that we see on Ravensburger products. It may seem like a coincidence, but I actually confirmed with the artist, was this intentional? He said, yes, this was an Easter egg to honor the company that gave me this job to create art for Lorcana. So fun little Easter egg there. If you're appreciating this card for the first time in this set, just make note that there's more than initially meets the eye. So that's it. Did I surprise any of you with these facts? Did I tell you anything you didn't know? Let me know in the comments below. And if there's things that you noticed about this set or that has changed with these cards over time, let me know. And please, if you enjoy this, like and subscribe. I love nerding out over Lorcana and bringing you fun videos like this. I'll see you next time.